Hey, thanks for stopping by. My name is Tyler, and today I want to talk about the new CLF-C02 exam, and specifically I want to compare the old CLF-C01 to the new CLF-C02, as I did just take the CLF-C01 a few months ago. So let's get into it. First, I want to talk about what changed between the domains. Then I'm going to go over some new services that you might see in the exam. And then I want to talk about kind of what the practice questions look like and what didn't change with the test and what might change with the test. So starting off with our domains here, we have cloud concepts moving from 26% of the exam to 24% of the exam. So that's going to be questions around what makes the cloud different, some of the key aspects of the cloud, what makes it special and different from your on-prem architecture. Along with that slight decrease in percentage of questions, it was mentioned that the cloud adoption framework would be more prevalent in the exam, so I absolutely recommend you read the white paper on that before your exam, because evidently it's going to be more prominent. So that's what I got for cloud concepts. Up next, we have security and compliance, which has the largest jump in percentages out of all of our domains, and it's jumping from 25 to 30% of the exam. So definitely a bigger focus on cloud security in this exam. Definitely make sure you know your WAFs, your network ACLs, your security groups, Macy, guard duty, all of these security services. And I would recommend getting some hands-on with these security services prior to your test, because with a jump like that, I mean, it's the second biggest domain now on the exam. So it might be worth hopping into the console, messing around with the security group, maybe building an ACL, maybe even setting up a WAF, because I know Amazon makes it pretty easy to do that. Another thing for the security and compliance domain that was mentioned is governance will play a bigger role in the new exam, so definitely make sure you know things like S3 object lock, kind of different modes with those. That would be a more in-depth question for this exam, but I think it could pop up, so definitely explore S3's governance options, along with things like Macy and other governance services. So security and compliance, definitely a bigger focus this year, or I guess this exam. It will last longer in the year, but it sounded cool when I said it. Moving on, we have our technology domain, which was actually renamed to Cloud Technology and Services. And this domain went from 33% of the exam to 34% of the exam. So you're going to see even more questions about services. This is going to be things like when you're using RDS versus Aurora versus DynamoDB for like databases. For compute, maybe it's EC2, Fargate, ECS, all of these wonderful compute services. What are the benefits of serverless versus something like an EC2 versus on-prem? So definitely make sure you know your services. Obviously, you guys probably know that the Cloud Practitioner exam is very, very heavy on the services questions. Lots of questions about what service is right for this use case. So that's what I got for the technology domain. And last but not least, this one actually excites me because this was definitely the domain I struggled with most. We have our billing and pricing domain, which was renamed to billing, pricing, and support. And that went from 16% to 12%. So you're going to see even less questions about billing and support and pricing. And the reason I said this one was my favorite was when I was studying for my CLF-C01, it was really tricky for me to remember where all of the white pages and documents and supports and communities were for AWS. And especially the billing tiers have a lot of specifics that go along with them as well. Like at what tier are you allowed, or at what tier do you have phone support for AWS experts to help you troubleshoot your architecture? It's business, by the way. So a little bit less on those questions, which, like I said, I like because that was the one I struggled with most. But it is absolutely still important to understand all of your support resources, your support tiers, obviously billing stuff, things like knowing that with AWS organizations, you can aggregate all of your costs from all of your accounts into one bill. It's called consolidated billing. So that kind of covers all of the domain changes, just high level what's changing as far as domains go. Now I want to go over some of the new services that you might see. I'm not going to explain what every service is, but I am going to list them off. Starting off, we have Data Exchange, Amazon Connect, AWS Billing Conductor, AWS IQ, AWS App Config, AWS AppStream 2.0, AWS IoT Core / AWS IoT Greengrass, and AWS Elastic Disaster Recovery. So those are the ones that stood out for me. There might be a few more, but those are the ones that I saw that I was like, I definitely was not asked questions on these in the CLF-C01. And even in my current exam, which is the AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate, I know I'm not asked questions about AWS IQ or Elastic Disaster Recovery because these services are pretty new, which is why they're just now being adopted into these certifications. So that's it for new services. Like I said, I wanted to just kind of skim over them. If I explained every single one of these, the video would be much longer, and we're already at around 7 minutes. So with that, let's move on to what didn't change. So the exam is still $100, but if you go to things like little seminars and webinars for AWS, you actually can get discounts. So it's definitely worth looking into kind of the offers available because Amazon is almost always running some sort of this activity that will allow you to get a discount on your exam voucher. Another thing that didn't change was the exam length. It is still, I think it's an hour and 40 minutes, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't remember the exact time off the top of my head, but the exam is still 65 questions, with 15 of those being unscored questions that are used for, I guess, testing these new questions. So not a whole lot of change there. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about kind of what I saw in the new practice questions released by AWS. I did just take those 20 minutes ago. So going through the questions, I didn't notice a whole lot of change. Very similar style to the CLF-C01. Not super in-depth, but all of the questions are still pretty use case based. It's not just going to ask you what service is used to identify PII. It's going to ask a medical facility wants to pick out PII from S3 buckets, and then you would obviously pick AWS or Amazon Macy's. So still very similar style for these questions. I think the biggest change is obviously going to be the quantity of questions from each domain. So let's go over those just one more time here. Domain 1, cloud concepts, we went from 26% to 24%. Domain 2, security and compliance, was our biggest jump from 25 to 30%. The technology and services domain had a jump as well from 33 to 34%. And last but not least, we have our billing and pricing domain going from 16% to 12%. I think that's all I had for you guys today. Of course, I appreciate you watching the video. If you have any questions, drop a comment. I always respond to my comments. If you enjoyed and you want to follow me on my journey through the tech world, of course, subscribe, leave a like on the video. Appreciate it. You know I have to shamelessly plug. But I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Thank you for watching.